Hey Faith, my name is Ryan. I'm one of the pastors here, and I get the privilege of introducing the next book in our Bible reading plan, which is the book of Judges. The book of Judges is the seventh book of the Bible, and it follows the book of Joshua that we just finished reading. The book itself doesn't name an author in the book, and so we're not 100% certain of who the author of the book is, but many believe, Jewish tradition would tell us that potentially it's Samuel who is the author, who is actually the last judge who is mentioned in the book of Judges, that many believe that he is the author. Let's talk a little bit about the title. The title Judges, well, it comes from the special leaders whom God raised up during this time period in Israel's history to rescue his people, and they were judges. The book of Judges is actually an important book in the Bible because it carries the story of the people of God forward from the conquest of the Promised Land to the book of Samuel, where ultimately David will become the king, and we know that David points us towards the king who will be king forever, which is Jesus. So if you've been reading along, following along in our Bible reading plan, then you know that Moses led the people out of slavery into Egypt, but he died before they actually entered into the Promised Land. So Joshua becomes their leader. And he was the one who would lead them into the Promised Land. And the people of Israel would conquer much of the land in Canaan under Joshua's leadership, but not all of it. Joshua dies, and the people don't have another leader at the time. Some Canaanites were still living in the land that they had not yet conquered, and the Israelites begin to actually adopt their ungodly ways, and they embrace the culture around them, and they reject God's call to be different. And it's sad. And we see this over and over throughout the people of Israel and throughout their history. Well, God raised up a series of judges who were really military leaders, who would take care of the challenges and the oppressors and lead the people at different times over the course of a 300 to 400 year period of time that really the book entails. So it's interesting though, as you read the book of Judges, you will see a cycle of behavior in the people of God. Here's the cycle. God's people will sin. They will suffer the consequences of their sin. They would repent. God would raise up someone who would deliver them, a judge who would deliver them. And it's just this cycle that they're in. And when a judge would die or something would happen, the cycle would start over again. They would sin. They would suffer the consequences. They would repent. God would raise up a deliverer. And what we really see through the book of Judges is it really begins to show their need for a king to constantly rule over them. In fact, one of the key verses in the book of Judges is the last verse of the book. Judges 21, verse 25. It says this, "In those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did whatever seemed right to him." The bottom line, Israel needed a king. The book of Judges points us to the need for God's grace to send a king to rescue his people, to lead his people, to deliver his people once and for all. And you and I know that ultimately that king would be Jesus, who is our king, who has rescued us, who has delivered us, who is our forever king. So you can even see the book of Judges pointing us towards the King, Christ. So let's dive into the book of Judges as we read it. My prayer is that we'll continue to learn, to grow, and encounter the living God through his word.